And I think we can unpack that going forward. While Minister Cele on peace and stability, security and stability, while Minister Cele is not here, the Deputy Minister Matale is here. What we can emphasize is the need for additional resources to build capacity. I think provincial we have managed to stabilize the system, and you can see that it is functional. But you find that at some point they are stretched with less resources, and I think from national, Deputy Minister Matale would want to emphasize that point. May I move to just a few issues? I think we take the point of building trust. Mr. O'Connor, you are correct, but we've been working hard to build trust. And from where we stand, trust should be cemented, one, around a common strategy and plan. Two, implementation of the plan, timers, intervention, accountability. And I think we've been trying our best to do so. Not only we are responding to issues of eThekwini. I think for those who are in Pietermaritzburg, Melanie, you can confirm we've been there last month, and we're coming back to deal with issues concerning the business community, but the community in Pietermaritzburg. We're dealing with issues of Ladysmith and Utugela, and I'm sure those issues were raised with MEC Pillay, and he took them up with me. We intervened. Simitomo, Defy, and Nestle, we are intervening to ensure that there is stability, uninterrupted provision of water. Richards Bay, Mr. Werner, just Friday, we were going to come there with Minister Mandashe. But you will know, police are working to deal with issues of stability, investigation of cases. Government has resolved the tension in the traditional communities. We have done everything, but we will want also to see you investing more and going forward with the Zulti South. So responsiveness is quite important. Tourism is affected, but working, we see that there is work being done. The oceans in Umhlanga, Mr. Reddy, we hope that you will be able, as you are inviting us to the opening soon. But we also are keen to see the implementation of the Film City in Durban as championed by Anand Singh. So we are quite decisive in our work. As we agreed in March that we should have a provincial economic command council, we have discussed it. Just this week we were discussing also with the Planning Commission that how to deal with issues of decisiveness in implementation. And we are of a view that, like the president, he established a unit that deals with the red tape and all of that. We want to establish the crack team, where we enlist all strategic projects and we ensure that the implementation is followed every week, every month. Not that we get through the monitoring reports at the end of the year. So we will build that capacity in the provincial government. So we are all in this together, inspired by your commitment, but we are quite dedicated and determined to play our role. With that, colleagues, may I invite the President, His Excellency, President Cyril Ramaphosa is known. He has been the president of this country. He has led us on key interventions. I think we've had 3 investment conferences already, and some of you have shown the commitment. Hence, we are yielding a positive result. When SABC says to us, move to ensure that the railway is implemented, we take that serious because we know that SAPI committed to expand its operation in the province, and they have done so. So that's why we take those issues with seriousness. The president doesn't need much introduction. He is known of the role he played in the transformation of this in the liberation of this country, the transformation during the negotiations and drafting of the Constitution. He has led us to stabilize the country, stabilize the economy, and we believe under his leadership, we will see this province and the country prospering. Let's welcome the President, His Excellency, President Ramaphosa.
Thank you. Let's be seated, please. Premier of KwaZulu-Natal Province, Mr. Sihle Zigalala, Mayor of eThekwini, Councillor Mxolisi Kaunda, President of the Durban Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mr. Nigel Ward, leaders of various other business organizations that are here, leaders of various entities of government who are also here, ministers, deputy ministers, MECs, civil servants, and ladies and gentlemen. I wish to thank the Durban Chamber of Commerce and Industry for inviting us to this very productive engagement. I also wish to thank other business organizations that are also here participating in this engagement as well. I'm really heartened to have been asked to come to this occasion to engage with you all. You represent what I would call the spirit of commitment, of hope, and patriotism to our country and the communities in which your businesses operate. As a business community, you have been through a great deal of challenges, and you counted 3, and I would say, actually there are many more. The challenge of unemployment also bears on your shoulders. The challenge of inequality and poverty is another. These are other challenges. It is also heartening to hear Mr. Tembe saying that the opportunities that abound in our country far outweigh the challenges that we face, and that we should really focus on those opportunities, and we should do so by collectively seeking to find ways in which we can build together and consolidate a social compact amongst us. I'm also pleased to have heard that the relations between business and government here in KwaZulu-Natal are really solid. You go to workshops together, you craft plans, and you identify what needs to be done. That is quite heartening to us. As government, we are firmly committed to work with and give the business community here in KwaZulu-Natal all the necessary support, also the resources and the technical capacity which we can get from yourselves to recover from the catastrophe that this beautiful province has gone through. Prior to traveling here, I met with respective ministers and deputy ministers and government officials to receive reports on progress that has been made in the multi-sectoral flood response and recovery plan. The KZN economy is a vital part of the national economy, and as correctly pointed out, it represents 16% of the GDP of our economy, the economic reconstruction and recovery underway across the country in the aftermath of COVID-19 cannot succeed without the swift, comprehensive and sustainable recovery of the economy of KwaZulu-Natal. Declaring the flood as a national state of disaster has really enabled us to mobilize more resources, more capabilities, technical expertise, which we have been able to carol from within government as well as the private sector within the various necessary timeframes. As business, your concerns and challenges are very specific, and we've had them all this morning, and ministers sought and did respond to a number of the issues that you have raised, as did our mayor as well as our premier. But of course, there will always be gaps, and these are gaps that we need to address together and to find solutions. Damage to key economic infrastructure such as roads, energy transmission and distribution, water and sanitation facilities, which you have spoken about, and the Port of Durban has had and continues to have a dire impact on your operations as businesses. It has been really sad to see some of the pictures of how the operations of a number of your businesses have actually been devastated. And today I got to hear that almost 34,000 people are affected, that is, workers would be affected by the damage that has been wrought by the floods. We are also keenly aware that the economy of KZN is still struggling to recover from last year's July unrest and the impact of the COVID-19. We have heard from Premier Zikalala and the Mayor and ministers on the progress that has been made in the restoration and rebuild effort. And as I said, there will always be gaps, but we can close those gaps as we work together. Sectors that power the provincial economy, such as manufacturing, retail, wholesale, distribution, warehousing, and freight, have been particularly hard hit. And the fact that 1,500 or so businesses were affected is a matter of great concern. And given the importance of the Port of Durban to the national and continental economy, restoring operations and rehabilitating damage to the port and associated infrastructure has indeed become a great priority and must be a national priority as well. We welcome the pace of progress towards restoring port road infrastructure and operational efficiency. This includes the terminal clearing, rail line, water draining and reopening stormwater jetting, and the repair of seawalls. We have been advised that the Transnet National Ports Authority has so far cleared more than 340 cubic meters of debris from the harbor, and I'm sure work continues. With regards to port traffic, capacity has been restored, and the port has handled more than 100 vessels since the 13th of April, and tugs are all operating at full capacity. Now, this I have found quite pleasing, because I really got worried that we would be marooned for quite a long time without the port operating. I'm told that terminal operations are also back at full capacity, with vessel offloading, loading operations, truck deliveries operating optimally as well. Now, efforts by Transnet to deal with rail infrastructure damage are also proceeding, although this is likely to take some time, given the extent of the damage. And the call and the ask by a company like SABC for the rail line to be either restored or rebuilt is an important one because it costs so much more money to put goods on the road. Transnet is also engaged in a consultation process with communities who will be impacted by construction works because there are a number of dwellings on the identified rail reserve that will need to be relocated. Work underway to fix affected roads, especially strategic roads that ferry goods to the port, is proceeding at a good pace with SANRAL as the implementing agency, as Minister Mbalula also said. A number of road repairs projects have been identified with an immediate focus on the N2 and N3 highways, and the necessary systems, I'm told, are being put in place so that they are not delayed and they proceed as quickly as possible. Now, today here, we have been given a progress update on the restoration of some of the services, and the mayor also articulated that. ESCOM has also been assisting a number of municipalities, and that should speed up and carry on. It is also encouraging that water restoration in most of the metro is also proceeding. But as Minister Mkhunu said, we need a major overhaul, and the build-up of the wall, of the dam, when it gets finished, is going to come in good stead indeed. So work there is also being done. Significant work has been done and is being done, as His Worship the Mayor said, to repair damaged water infrastructure, such as the wastewater treatment plants, pump stations, and reticulation. Now, the deployment of built environment professionals to conduct flood damage assessments and participate in the Joint Operating Committee has enabled us to have the necessary technical expertise put to service in affected districts. Minister DeLille, if she had had an opportunity, she would have given us a great deal of detail of exactly the teams that have been put together, and it's quite impressive from both the public sector as well as the private sector, teams with enormous skills, experience, and knowledge that have been brought to bear to deal with the damage that has been wrought by the floods here. This progress notwithstanding, challenges we must admit do remain, challenges that have a direct and serious impact on the provincial economy. The interruptions to rail has interrupted the delivery of exports to the port, with automotive and citrus produce particularly badly affected. The short-haul trucking solution to facilitate faster inward container movement is working well, but will put further pressure on traffic flows, particularly around the Bayhead Road. Whilst on trucking issues, you heard Minister Mbalula saying that negotiations are proceeding and should hopefully yield some good results with the trucking people. And I'm hopeful that this will indeed lead to a breakthrough, which our economy so sorely needs. Completing all the rail repair works that have been identified within necessary time frames will also be very critical. We're encouraged that there are discussions underway with Toyota and the city of eThekwini on what measures are needed to restore the Toyota plant in the area where they operate to full capacity, but also to address what is needed to secure resilience for the future. Now, a great many lessons have been learned from what we have just gone through here. As government, we must now prioritize as we work together with regard to the integration of climate change and its associated impacts into all of government's planning. And it is in this regard that we will say, this is where we also need to work together. Because even as we plan, we don't plan what happens in the city, on the metro, on our own. We have other key role players. This includes what I would call climate-proofing human settlements, building climate resilience in the agricultural sector, and constructing climate-resilient infrastructure as well. We need a complete overhaul, particularly now that we know we are susceptible to climate change vagaries, both on the eastern seaboard of our country, as well as Minister Dlamini Zuma often says, on the western side where the droughts are quite severe. Our collective state of readiness for natural disasters has to be drastically improved, and disaster risk assessments by all provinces have to be regular and have to be ongoing. This disaster proved to us that we are not as ready as we should be, and therefore, working together, we need to put together measures, structures, processes, and a variety of initiatives to ensure that we are disaster ready. There will now be a clear expectation that municipalities, provinces, and departments should develop, should update as well, review and submit their disaster management and contingency plans to the National Disaster Management Council. Mechanisms to improve access to provincial and municipal disaster relief funding are being addressed. And Mr. Gumede has raised the challenge of dual governance structures, which results in either delays and sometimes derailment and sometimes a great deal of confusion in executing projects. I agree that we need to look closely at the manner in which our governance structures can best function in a cooperative manner. But as Minister Dlamini Zuma said, the traditional leaders whom we often just ignore when we have to deal with these matters need to be brought into the whole process so that they are also able to play their role. And if we can do so, we can possibly get rid of the challenges that we face in relation to these dual structures. Another issue also under discussion is the scope for provinces and municipalities to delegate certain disaster relief functions to well-capacitated institutions if they lack the capacity. And we have seen how a number of other institutions have been able to come to give assistance, and where there may be lack of capacity, we should look at the extent to which those can also be shared. All organs of state have to develop risk-informed disaster management and contingency plans that can be implemented at short notice. This will be done through the one district, one plan process that really underpins our district development model. We are encouraged by the efforts of the eThekwini Metro around early warning systems and to raise awareness in our communities particularly about the impacts of climate change and the extreme weather associated with it. Engagement with communities, especially around constructing dwellings in high-risk and flood-prone areas, is critical if we are to prevent such great loss of life in the future. But we also need to pay more attention on our town planning processes. And in this regard, we also need to upscale and skill a number of young people in planning processes, in town planning, and urban planning and all those other disciplines. Because when we have such well-trained people, they will be able to raise the alarm a lot quicker when our plans go awry. We have agreed that our foremost priority now must be on helping the people of KwaZulu-Natal to rebuild their lives and to assist businesses in the province to get its economic recovery program back on track. And we welcome the efforts in this regard that are being driven by the KZN Growth Coalition, of which the Durban Chamber of Commerce forms part. And it is in this regard that I say I'm particularly pleased to have realized that the relationship between business and the government here in this province are quite good and progressive. When the flooding struck the affected provinces last month, there were dire predictions from many that we would slide further into an abyss. But the province of KZN, supported by a coordinated national disaster management effort, has shown its mettle. And we have shown that we can address the challenges, much as there may well be shortcomings. Some of the issues that you have raised demonstrate that there is still much to be done. But at the same time, we are indeed showing our mettle, because by merely being at this meeting shows that we are a people who are prepared to act together, to work together, to address the challenges. And this I truly commend you for. After the unrest in July, I convened on Zoom a meeting which was attended by some of you who were in the attendance of that meeting, but there were quite a number of CEOs across the country that numbered more than 200 or so. And I was truly, truly heartened, because it was at that meeting where CEOs were able to say, we now need to pay greater attention to societal challenges that our people face, and should not only be focusing on the profit line. And they also said with one voice that we should all work together and ensure that we address the challenges that face our country together. I think we have made considerable progress, but there is far more that we do need to do. As I said, the toll on human life has been high, and we mourn all those who have died. Premier and I, earlier this morning as I arrived, were counting that we are probably going to be talking about more than 500 people whose lives would have been lost in this province. Our thoughts are with those who have lost their homes, and also businesses, and we'd like them to be assured that every effort will be made to support them at this time, including some of those who feel that they are being excluded, like taverners and so forth. We need also to look at the way in which they can also be assisted. This meeting for me has been a valuable platform to engage on the urgent priorities for business in the province, so that we are able to recover and so that we are able to build back better. You spoke very articulately about infrastructure that is in bad shape, and you said very clearly, infrastructure has to be replaced. And clearly that is going to cost quite a lot of money. We now need to put our heads together and work on the suggestions that can come forward on how we are going to mobilize funding. And we need to be creative, we need to be innovative, and working together, the public sector and the private sector, we definitely can find ways. And we need to transform, yes, this province and the country into a real infrastructure-built area where we create a construction site. I traveled to the Middle East the other day to the show that they had there in the UAE, and I could see why the Middle East or UAE had been called the biggest building site in the world. And we can also live up to that and have our own building site as we reconstruct and rebuild our country. And that is the dream that we should all aspire to achieve. Now, we have stressed that we are facing an economic crisis, and appropriate measures need to be taken to respond to it. And you have suggested that, yes, maybe we should have an economic command council. These discussions are ongoing as we move ahead to build that compact I spoke about during the State of the Nation, where I said we've got 100 days during which we can put a compact together. The discussions, the negotiations are ongoing. And of course, the media thought that we were talking about 100 calendar days. We were talking about 100 working days. And the working days calculation still gives us some time, but the discussions are ongoing. And the suggestion that you are making that we need that type of command council is a very good suggestion, which we will take on board. As I said earlier, the economy of KZN must be recovered for it to be an inclusive process that will affect the lives of our people here and contribute to the creation of jobs, and so that the jobs that are threatened to be lost through the floods should be saved and more jobs should be created. In conclusion, I want to thank the KwaZulu-Natal business community for all the support they have lent to the humanitarian effort since the floods occurred. A number of your businesses have stepped forward and have given our people support, and we really, truly thank you for that. Many of you have done so without being acknowledged, and I'd like to acknowledge you for all the assistance and the support that you have given to those of our people here in KwaZulu-Natal who have faced real hardships. There's a lot of work ahead, but I'm confident that working together, we will succeed. It is through partnerships and collaboration that we'll be able to recover and to rebuild in a manner that leaves no one behind. I thank you, and thank you very much for inviting me to this meeting. Thank you.
Making. I must say, Mr. President, on Monday, I know there were certain inputs that came that suggested people are debating in their minds, but it's a debate born out of frustration, and you can't sustain that debate as far as whether you should be elsewhere and not in KwaZulu-Natal. On Monday, I was deployed by the Premier to attend the official opening of Kerry Foods in Hammersdale. Kerry Foods is an Irish company, 22,000 employees worldwide, over 110 outlets. The group CEO was there, managers from other parts of the world were there. And there's a 650 million rand investment. Not taking decisions, launched, official opening. And they were very clear that they are very excited to be in KwaZulu-Natal. They have, which I'm sure many other businesses have, the hub and spoke strategy in the world. And they're on record that in Africa, their hub is here in KwaZulu-Natal, in Hammersdale in particular, and their spokes will be in other countries in Africa like Kenya and so on. So when we say in our mission statement that KwaZulu-Natal will be the gateway to Africa and the world, it is not just...
And of course, we are coming out there of that important meeting between President Cyril Ramaphosa as well as the various business leaders in the country, talking about how the country will have to come back from those devastating floods there in KZN. And of course, he spoke about, collectively seeking ways to build the economy together. Further went more on to speak about how it would be important now to have disaster assessments in all provinces, and town planning processes must be bolstered and boosted in order to anticipate such disasters. And this is all on the sidelines of his all-important address that's going to be happening at the 5th Global Conference on the Elimination of Child Labor. We're keeping an eye on that because it will be happening a bit later on. In just a moment, actually, from now, we will be bringing it to you as it happens. We take you now to another story. The 5th Global Conference on the Elimination of Child Labor is taking place in Durban this week and will assess progress in eradicating child labor in the world. More than 2,000 participants are registered for the in-person event, with 5,000 expected to follow and engage virtually. The